Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to quite possibly one of the most highly requested videos I've ever done. My top 5 worst metal albums of 2021, and I'm not wasting any fucking time here. You know why you're here. I know why I'm here. My previous top 5 worst metal albums video of 2020 is one of the most popular on this channel, nearing 10,000 views. I know for a fact that statistically, most of the people watching this channel, watching this video right now, started doing so because of that video. And other videos like it, in which I railed, for better or for worse, against albums that I thoroughly did not enjoy. So I don't want to hear anyone fucking moaning. I don't want to hear anyone going on that no one asked you to make this, because statistically that's just not fucking true. You know why you're here. You know why you clicked on this video. Let's not bullshit each other. Let's talk about the worst metal albums of 2021. Why? Because you fucking asked for it. Y'all should know the drill by now, but just in case, let's go over a few ground rules. First off, this is not a ranked or numbered list. I am going to be talking about each of these albums in order of release, and when we arrive at what I feel is the number 1 worst album of the year, I will simply tell you. Secondly, I will not be talking about any album that has not been featured in some capacity on the Metal Meltdown, be it in a full-blown album review or even in a segment from an Albums I Missed video. And thirdly, finally, just a quick reminder that this is ultimately just my opinion. I am not God. My word is not law. If you happen to enjoy one or two or all of the albums featured in this video in any capacity, be it legitimate or ironic or some weird fusion of the two, good for you. I'm being totally serious here. With this out of the way, let's officially start the video. I don't really have any honorable mentions, or perhaps in this case, more appropriately, dishonorable mentions to speak of. So let's just jump straight into the top 5, starting with Perfectly Preserved from Love and Death, the sophomore studio album from the side project of Brian Welch of Korn fame, also featuring members of Breaking Benjamin and Finneas. I don't fucking know how to pronounce their fucking name. Here's what I do know. This is one of the most boring pieces of generic pop nu metal tripe I've ever heard in my life. There were, in my opinion, quite a few genuinely terrible slices of radio-friendly pop metal dished out in 2021, but none quite as soulless, as generic, as predictable, as flat and lifeless as Perfectly Preserved. Filled to the brim with some of the laziest, most predictable, copy-paste, run-of-the-mill lyrics and melodies and hooks imaginable, the production is flat, lifeless. The album has the heart and the soul of a rotting corpse, or perhaps a small bundle of pebbles and twigs. The album has the weight and the impact of a bag of feathers, or a box of wet crackers. All the muddy riffs and tired beats are all so similar to each other from track to track that eventually it just kind of blurs into one monotonous nu metal, pop metal blob. At no point does the album pick up in speed, in enthusiasm, in emotion, in momentum, even when guest stars are brought into the mix, even when Love and Death are covering some kind of energetic mainstream pop songs like Justin Bieber's Let Me Love You. The latter of which is probably the most memorable cut on this entire album, but not so much because it's objectively the best, or even because it's horrifically more terrible than anything else and therefore needs to be talked about. It's memorable only because it happens to be a cover of a very popular song from a very popular artist. That is it. It is memorable only because you have very likely already heard it, and therefore you already kind of remember it. And you'll definitely be remembering the original Justin Bieber version long after we're done with this video, because it's not like Love and Death do anything new with their version. All they do is they take a bunch of riffs that Korn probably left off their last few albums from the early 2010s, and they just plaster it onto here with the same lifeless, soul-sucking production that they've been using across the rest of the record. Put very simply, Perfectly Preserved is 35 minutes of boredom, an album's worth of unseasoned, white bread, Hellman's mayonnaise, vanilla extract, missionary sex, meat and potatoes, new metal, pop metal crap that we probably wouldn't be talking about in any capacity had members of Korn and Breaking Benjamin and Finneas, whatever, not been attached to this project. If this was a no-name band releasing their first ever album, nobody would know or care about Love and Death. And hopefully that's how we'll treat this band going forward, because wow, what a terrible fucking record. Album number 2 on my list is Judas, the latest studio album from Lord of the Lost. A lot of people are really loving this album. AMP Reacts loved it. Jamie Horsley loved it. Good for them. I fucking do not. There is a lot that I admire about the concept and the scale of this record. The idea of a Jesus Christ Superstar-esque concept album, but from the perspective of Judas, a disciple of Jesus Christ and his eventual betrayer, is itself pretty fucking fascinating. And I will say that from a production standpoint, this is also a very well-made album. Strings, keyboards, guitars, vocal harmonies, and textures genuinely pop in the forefront of the sound. It's quite lush, it's quite evocative. This is not a heartless or soulless affair like the aforementioned Perfectly Preserved. There's a lot of passion and a lot of hard work that was put into it. But it is ultimately passion and hard work that did not, in my opinion, pay off. The album is bloated. The album is pretentious. It recycles a lot of the same song structures and melodies and rhythms to the point where everything just eventually turns into a hymn-like goth metal blur. And unfortunately, in my opinion, Lord of the Lost do not capitalize on the full potential of their concept. Instead of retelling the story of Judas Iscariot in sonic form in grandiose fashion, they're just kind of using a lot of the stuff he did as an allegory for heartbreak and betrayal and misery, which itself is not that unique or exciting of a concept. In fact, Judas has been used as an allegory, as a symbol for all of these things for as long as popular music has existed. The likes of Johnny Cash, Tom Waits, Lady Gaga, and many more have used Judas as an allegory, as a symbol, as something, and they all do it objectively better than Lord of the Lost. And honestly, even if you love this album, can you really sit here and tell me that this needed to be an hour and 44 minutes long? It makes the album feel so bloated and fatty. I mean, for God's sakes, there are major Hollywood blockbusters that aren't as long as this fucking album. Venom Let There Be Carnage was an hour and 37 minutes long. Disney's Encanto was an hour and 39 minutes long. This is an hour and 44 minutes long, and it does not fucking need to be. This album isn't just one of the worst of 2021, it's also one of the most disappointing. I mean, there are so many great ideas on this album, so many unique ideas presented through the concept, through the story, through the design and production of this album, and most, if not all of them, are wasted, really. Album number 3 on my list is Metal's Back from Dungeon Wolf. I'm not sure if this is a debut or a sophomore album. I was told it was a debut by Dungeon Wolf, but other people have told me that they've put out some other records in the past. I don't know, and honestly, I don't fucking care. All that really matters is that this, quite honestly, is one of the worst traditional heavy metal albums I've ever heard. And I'm being fully fucking serious. In every sense of the word, in every way imaginable, this album is horrendous. Horrendously written, horrendously performed, horrendously presented and produced. It's horrendous. I think Dungeon Wolf's intent was to pay homage to a lot of proto-metal and a lot of like early Nawabum stuff, you know, bands like Venom, Sirif Ungol, Manila Road. You can definitely hear a lot of those influences in the music and even in the production of the record, but the execution just feels so half-assed. It doesn't feel like an homage, it feels like a sad, unintentional parody. The music is sloppy, lethargic, amateurish, even at best. Most of this album sounds like a bunch of drunk middle-aged dads jamming in somebody's garage or basement. I feel very comfortable and confident saying that there is not a single moment on this album that is even semi-competent. I could pick up a guitar and some drumsticks right fucking now, and with what little equipment I have here right now, record something objectively better than any one moment on this album. It's an absolute mess, to the point where I can't help but question if this is even real. If you told me this was part of some weird prank from Eric Andre or something left out of an SNL skit, I honest to God might have fucking believed you. Dungeon Wolf claims to be bringing metal back. I mean, it's literally in the fucking title. But if this is what their take on metal sounds like, I don't want it back. They can fucking keep it. Album number 4 on my list is Moral Hygiene from Ministry. The industrial rock and metal titans have re-emerged following the extremely controversial Americant with a brand new studio album, and it's objectively better, I guess. Still not very good. The production is cluttered, clumsy, all over the place. There are turntables and samples interjected almost randomly throughout the album. They are distracting, they are annoying. Al himself feels weirdly removed and distant from everything. It sounds as if the microphone was in one corner of the room and he was in the other, and he just would not move fucking closer, so he just screamed all his fucking lyrics. Whereas Americant boiled down to about an hour's worth of Al ranting about how much he fucking hated Donald Trump, this album is a lot more poignant, a lot more provocative, a lot more effective. Al talks a lot about COVID-19 and police brutality, and just kind of taps, generally speaking, into the social and political anguish and anxiety of the past 2-3 years. And it does make this album more important, but the problem is Al himself never elaborates on any of these issues. Instead, he relies on samples from Greta Thunberg and Donald Trump and other political activists and pastors and well-known figures to kind of illustrate his points for him, and then he just kind of reacts to them like some kind of hype man. Not only is this approach just genuinely quite cheap and lazy, it occasionally gives the impression that Al is not really too attached to any of these issues one way or the other, because he's never actually contributing to the conversation. And this approach gets downright tacky and cringeworthy on a track like Good Trouble, where Al basically uses the chants and phrases of Black Lives Matter protesters and the late John Lewis for a hip-hop industrial breakdown, complete with grating guitars and electronic drums and turntables. And speaking of cringeworthy, oh my fucking god, that cover of Search and Destroy? Iggy Pop should sue for defamation, it's that fucking bad. One of the worst covers I've heard in 2020, maybe one of the worst covers I've heard ever. The general consensus is that Moral Hygiene is objectively a better album, or at least a less annoying album, than Americant. And you're not wrong, but don't pretend for a moment that that means this is automatically good, because it's not. You know? It might not be diarrhea, but it's still shit. And this brings us to album number 5 on my list, Still Sucks, from Limp fucking Bizkit. And are you ready to hear something real fucking wacky, real fucking crazy, real fucking nutso, folks? Despite the threats of violence, despite the homophobic, ableist language, and the generally crude behavior of knuckle-dragging Limp Bizkit fanboys all over the globe, despite the fallout from my personal opinion, Limp Bizkit still sucks. still fucking sucks. Yeah, believe it or not, folks, trying to bully, threaten, intimidate me won't make me change my mind. Trying to tell me that it's self-aware and therefore I shouldn't take it seriously will not suddenly convince me that this album is a fucking masterpiece, especially when it fucking isn't. Yes, it's more self-aware. Yes, it is intentionally quite cheeky and corny and stupid, but that doesn't make it better. Saying that you're stupid doesn't make you less fucking stupid. The music is dated, dumb, cringeworthy. Fred Durst, as a lyricist, as a vocalist, as a frontman, as a human being, sounds like utter fucking trash. His clean singing in particular is awful on this album. The band's attempts at self-deprecating and ironic and self-aware humor fall completely flat on their fucking ass for me. I mean, the punchline consistently across the album is, "Yo, you think we suck? Yo, you're fucking right." And that's it. And I'm just supposed to pretend that it's amazing because Limp Bizkit acknowledge that they suck. They acknowledge that they're dads and they're corny and they're out of style. I'm just supposed to love this album because Limp Bizkit acknowledge that they fucking suck. That is fucking stupid. That is a stupid, flawed, illogical argument. You are wrong. I cannot believe that I need to keep saying this, but I'm gonna keep saying this. Limp Bizkit acknowledging that they're out of style, that they're dated, that they're tacky, that they're a giant fucking joke, does not make them less of a joke. For me, it just makes them more fucking annoying, more fucking obnoxious. The nicest, kindest, most generous thing I can say about this album is thank God, at the very least, it's not as long as previous studio albums. That is it. That is the closest thing to anything semi-decent I can stomach to say about this album. I firmly believe that most of the people who love this album love it because of memes and nostalgia. That's it. Because if this were released by any other band, it would be disregarded as the completely ridiculous, immature bullshit that it is. What more can I say, folks? Limp Bizkit still sucks. Despite the objections of angry fanatics worldwide, still fucking sucks. You're not gonna change my mind on this. Don't fucking bother trying. And that is it! Kind of. Sort of. That does it for the top 5, but there's one band we still need to talk about in some capacity. I'm not going to talk about them too much, for reasons that will be made very clear once I say their name, but we need to talk about Psycho Sinner and the 9 studio albums they released this year. For those of you somehow unaware, Psycho Sinner is the latest incarnation of an ongoing project from one Jeremy Spencer. They're tacky, they're crude, they make shit fucking music, and this year, after a slew of controversy, they released 9 brand new studio albums simultaneously, and they're all horrible. Altogether, they are easily the worst metal records I've heard all year, and the worst I've maybe heard ever. Psycho Sinner are so bad, they broke the fucking scale, to the point where from now on, if there's an album I feel that deserves less than a 0, I'm literally going to give it a Psycho Sinner out of 5. The only reason we're not talking about them any further in this video, the only reason they're not in this video, the only reason we're not talking about all 9 albums, or expanding this to a top 14, or a top 20, or whatever the fuck, is because I already made a video in which I thoroughly railed against Psycho Sinner and detailed explicitly what makes them so fucking awful. So while they may not have been included on this list for logistical reasons, be aware that they absolutely made the worst metal, the worst music in 2021. And considering all the shit we just talked about, that is one hell of a fucking accomplishment. And that is officially it. I am not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so let me know what you think. What were your worst metal albums of 2021? What were your least favorite albums? What albums got under your skin and drove you fucking nuts? Or perhaps that you were disappointed by, or that you felt were super overhyped? Press subscribe for updates on the Metal Meltdown to get them immediately so that you know what we're up to, blah, blah, blah. Fuck this little cup. You have yourself a fantastic fucking day. Should have gotten whiskey or vodka. Oh well. Booze is booze. Numbs the pain either way. Peace!